यका नित्यपुरीश नित्येश्वरा हरि नित्य
नित्यानन्दं परमसुखदं केवलं ज्ञानमूर्तिं द्वन्द्वातीतं गगनसदृशं तत्त्वमस्यादिलक्ष्यम् एकं नित्यं विमलमचलं सर्वदी साक्षिभूतं भावातीतं त्रिगुणरहितं Satgurum Tam Namami. Nityanandam, and thank you for tuning in to this morning's episode of Living Advaita. Yesterday I mentioned that every day between now and the time we arrive in Ujjaini for the next Kumbh Mela, I'll share one of the stories from the previous Kumbh Mela that happened in Nashik and Trembakeshwar. Today what I'd like to talk about is the Bandara. Bandara is a sacred feast that's hosted in different adinams, so by different masters, by different gurus, in which they invite all the sadhus, all the spiritual renunciants, everybody who's wearing the saffron cloth, dedicating their lives to the upholdment of Sanatana Hindu Dharma. All are invited to sit together and share a ceremonial feast. In Trembakeshwar, Swamiji actually hosted Bandara on numerous occasions, in which we would see literally thousands of sadhus coming in cycles, so 1,000 at a time, in order to eat traditionally prepared pure vegetarian sattvic food. One of the beautiful aspects of Bandara is that the sadhus who sit, not only they have reverence for each other, reverence for the gods and goddesses, and reverence for the sacred tradition of enlightenment, they also have reverence for everything around them, from the banana leaf on the floor to the food that's placed on top of it, to the people who are serving them. Literally, when you walk into a bandara, it's like you're walking into another time or another space, energetic space, because the amount of energy present is huge. Food is recognized as the stuff which gives us our sustenance, the stuff which gives us our energy. And when the sadhus are eating, they're not just chit-chatting with each other. You don't see people engrossed in some conversation, mindlessly putting the food into their mouths. You don't see people distractedly looking around and chewing. You see people intensely focused on their food. In fact, during Bandara, food is worshipped. It's actually considered as God. So instead of just eating, they refer to the food not only by its name, but by its name with the addition of Ram. Ram, of course, is one of God's names, the name of the god Vishnu when he took the avatar of Ram. So instead of asking just for sabji, which is vegetables in Hindi, they'll ask for sabji Ram. Instead of asking for pani, for more water to drink, they'll ask for pani Ram. Whatever they ask for, they'll put the name Ram at the end of it. That means they're truly revering the food. Swamiji told us that when we were being prepared to have the Bandara, all the volunteers who were there for that previous Kumbh Mela, literally all of them were gathered together and trained as to how to properly serve sadhus, how to have the right body language, the right posture, the right way of offering the different items, how to pay attention to make sure that everybody is being served what they need. One of these volunteers raised a doubt and asked Swamiji, if we have 1,000 people eating on banana leaves on the floor, and then we only have 10 minutes to clean up after them, place the next banana leaves for the next people who are coming, the next 1,000 people, next 1,000 sadhus, how are we going to possibly do it without making a mess? How can we do it in a way that they won't have to be sitting on the food? And Swamiji said, what you don't understand is that if you have a regular meal with ordinary people off the street, if you're serving ordinary food, for example, in some restaurant, or at a school function, if there's some kind of a school picnic taking place, he said that ordinary people, they don't really put themselves into the act of eating. They're not in the present moment. They'll be mindlessly doing it maybe for the taste. Of course, the food served at Bandara is tasty. Don't get me wrong about that. But Swamiji was saying ordinary people, they'll just be eating for the taste, eating for the enjoyment, eating because it's the right time to eat, eating because the food is there. Because they don't really care about the food, because they're not really engrossed in the act of eating, they make a mess. They'll spill it all over the place. When they're finished, they might toss the remnants of what they'd eaten to the side carelessly. He said if 1,000 people were coming in to eat in that kind of a way, there would be some difficulty in cleaning up after them. But he said the sadhus, they have such a huge appreciation for the food, such a huge reverence and respect for the tradition. They will never make a mess. And sure enough, I was amazed to see it. 1,000 people ate on 1,000 banana leaves with food constantly being served until the meal was finished. Not one grain of rice was out of place. If there was any food left over, it was kept neatly on the banana leaf, and the sadhus themselves wrapped it up again, so that those who were cleaning could easily just pick up that bundle of waste, put it aside, and put the fresh leaf. It was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. And some people will say about Kumbh Mela, such a huge number of people, all together in one place. How chaotic that must be. I can say there was a huge number of people, but they were not chaotic. Every single person knew their role, knew why they were there, had the right context for their actions, and it was like watching a perfectly orchestrated dance. The way they ate was a thing of beauty. So if you're coming to the next Kumbh Mela, set to take place in Ujjaini, you're in for a treat. Don't miss out. If there's an opportunity to volunteer for the Bandara, for one thing, it's a sight to be seen. 1,000 sadhus. Actually, Swamiji said this time there's a huge camp. He's already started construction on a building that's bigger than all the buildings in the Bengaluru Adinam combined. In that huge of a tent, we won't have to feed sadhus in shifts of 1,000. There can be thousands. I don't know how many thousands, but many thousand can sit at a time. To see a sea of spiritual renunciants, a sea of saffron, really, to see that sitting there, and then to be able to witness each individual being who's on such a deep spiritual path, dedicating their life to Mahadeva, dedicating their life to enriching the world and preserving the tradition of Sanatana Hindu Dharma. It's such a thing of beauty. And also, Vedically speaking, if you read the ancient scriptures, the Shastras, there are different prescriptions what we can do in order to build up the best kind of karma, in order to gain the greatest benefit from our sadhana, from our spiritual service. Feeding sadhus is one of the top actions that we can do in our life in order to build the greatest punya, the greatest good karma. So when Swamiji hosts these huge Bandara feasts, if you're there as a participant or if you're there as a volunteer, don't miss that opportunity. Just jump in and decide that you're going to do this sacred service. Feed the sadhus. Enjoy the positive energy that emanates from them, and really witness the most incredible meal you'll ever see. Now with that, I'd like to move into the topic that was addressed today in the recorded satsang that we watched here in Nityananda Pitam, Bengaluru Adinam. Today we watched a satsang from 2013 in which Swamiji was speaking about the root thought current. Swamiji actually was talking about how people get stuck in a way of thinking. At some point in their early childhood, they developed a root thought current. Now, what a root thought current means, in any situation in life, whatever you're trying to do or whatever you're doing, there will be a certain theme going on in your mind. The way that you process information, the way that you think, the way that you plan, the way that you hold yourself, the way that you witness others, basically your whole concept about yourself and your whole concept about life, all of that put together can be called your root thought current. Typically, that's established in early childhood. So at some point in life, you might have encountered a challenge or a difficulty. The moment you fell into powerlessness and thought, no, I can't do it, that would be the beginning of the root thought current. From there, every time you face a similar challenge or a similar difficulty, reverting back to that space of I can't do it. That means perpetuating it, making that thought current into a trend that plays out in your life again and again and again. Usually, we never know the origin of our root thought current. We'll be living with this pattern of feeling stuck, feeling helpless, feeling incapable, feeling incompetent. Maybe the thought current that you've established, the root thought current, maybe it's not the incapability. Maybe it's something different, like greed. Maybe as a kid you witnessed somebody else having something more than you, and you immediately thought, I'll do whatever it takes, but I want that. And so you bullied the other kid and took it. And then in life you have a constant trend of grabbing what others have, trying to take, and it wreaks havoc on your interpersonal relationships. It causes difficulty in your life because no matter how much you get, you always want more. That greed current would be there. Maybe there's some kind of shame and insecurity current. Maybe you got caught doing something you weren't supposed to do. Or maybe some teacher or some adult thought you were doing something and you got in trouble even though you weren't actually doing it. And so you developed a feeling of victimhood. No matter what I do, I get in trouble. And so throughout the rest of your life, you're constantly worried that somebody is going to start yelling at you for no reason. Swamiji said, until you discover and complete with the root thought current, your life doesn't actually begin. He said life only starts after you first identify that root thought current and then completely complete with it. He explained that a lot of the time, we nurture that root thought current because we are ignorant. We don't even realize what the root thought current is. So somebody else looking in might look at the person, might look at you, might look at me, might look at anybody who's still living with that root thought current. Might look at the person and say, wow, that person is full of greed and selfishness, constantly grabbing things. No matter how much he gets, he wants more. He's insatiable. He'll never be happy as long as he's doing this. But for that person himself, because he's not aware of the root thought current, he won't have that consciousness to look at himself and realize what's happening. He'll keep grabbing and grabbing and grabbing and trying to get more, totally unaware. Even if he becomes a billionaire, he'll be looking at somebody with more billions like Bill Gates, and he'll have that envy, that feeling of need to acquire. He'll be unfulfilled. The same way you might be looking at somebody who has a root thought current of incapability. And you'll see, wow, the projects this person has taken on, they're not that hard. I could do it. I would do this, I would do that. If I was that person, I'd make it happen. But for that person, if they have a root thought current that I'm not able to do this, I don't know what to do, no matter how much an outside observer might have good suggestions for them, advice for them, they'll feel so chaotic and frenzied inside, they won't be able to put that into practice. I know a lot of people, they have a root thought current of insecurity that leads them into a feeling of inability to public speak. I've asked certain people, they've shared miracle experiences with me. They've spoken about connections they have with the deities or connections they have with Swamiji. Beautiful miracles that have taken place in their life. And I've said, wow, that's such a beautiful experience. It can inspire so many people. Why don't you come sit as my guest on Living Advaita and share it with the Sangha? Or why don't you start a YouTube channel? Tell all the world what's happening with you. People will be interested in this. And they'll immediately say, no, I really don't know what I would say on camera. And I'll say, you just tell the exact story you told me in those words. You did it perfectly. If you can tell me, you can tell the camera. But they get into such a fear pattern. They freeze. The very thought of talking to a camera to them is terrifying. Until they find the root thought pattern that created that fear of public speaking or that fear of being in front of the camera, they'll never be able to do it. They'll hold themselves back and avoid it again and again and again. So Swamiji told us, the key to starting life, to living life in the right context, in the right direction, so that you are running your life, instead of allowing the enemy, that self-deprecating, limiting thought current to run your life, is to identify that root thought current and complete with it. Now, I myself am taking this up. I'm going to identify my root thought current, find out whatever is holding me back from success in all the different projects I've taken up. What is it that's not allowing me to have that complete success? I'm going to start that introspection, find that root thought current, and I encourage you to do the same. So look into your life. What are things that you would do if you were able to do them? Maybe make a list for yourself. If you could do anything, if you had the entire skill set available to humanity on planet Earth, if you were able to manage other people like a perfect leader, and you were able to express creatively in every dimension, dance, sing, paint, draw, if you were able to stand in front of the camera or on stage in front of a huge crowd and speak fluently, what would you tell? What would you deliver? What would your message be? If you were able to take on tons and tons of work and get it all done, what would you choose to do? If you could make millions of dollars, would you want to be a millionaire? Make a list of everything that you want. And then look within yourself and ask yourself, if I really truly want all of these things, what is holding me back from getting them? I guarantee you, because I know Swamiji was speaking the highest truth when he said this, if you really look in and what it all boils down to, there's nothing outside of you preventing you from getting all of those things that you want. There's no external conspiracy against you. There's only an internal conspiracy you're creating against yourself by nurturing that thought current, that root thought current, instead of breaking the root thought current and jumping into life with passion, enthusiasm, and determination to be successful. Let's take this time to really do what Swamiji is telling us to do. He actually said in this discourse very strongly, anybody who considers him as their guru, so if you consider Swamiji as your guru, if you consider yourself as his disciple, this is his guru vak, this is what he's telling us to do. Identify the root thought current and complete it. Only then our life is going to start. Now, a lot of people, even after they identify the root thought current, that might be the first step, identify the root thought current. Then they wonder, how am I supposed to complete with it? What do I do? What's the next step? I can say the absolute best next step that you can do is come to inner awakening. Swamiji himself conducts the classes, conducts the sessions, gives the initiations, gives the darshans, to help us completely complete with all the things that are holding us back. In fact, even if you yourself, by your own work, are not able to identify the root thought current, when you come to the Master physically, he will identify it for you. He'll be able to just look into your life, look into your inner space and see, at some age this happened. How you reacted to that gave rise to this thought current, complete with it. Here's how. He'll lead you through that beautiful step-by-step process to complete your incompletions. You won't even believe that you're the same person after that's taken place. You'll see such a huge positive influence on your life coming from within your own self. Because ultimately, once you evict that root thought current that's been living rent-free in your inner space, trashing your inner space like some bad tenants who rent an apartment and then break everything. You've let this thought current live inside you, literally corroding your insides, preventing you from achieving what you want to achieve, making you feel as if you're not as good as other people, making you feel as if your goals are unreachable, making you feel as if life is difficult, life is a challenge. It's not. Just complete with that root thought current. If you want to start the process of doing that on your own, before coming to Inner Awakening or Kumbh Mela, before physically coming to the Master and allowing him to do it for you, he has given us many beautiful steps for how we can do that in various discourses over the last few years. The first thing Swamiji tells us to do when it comes time to completing with our incompletions and identifying the root is sit with ourselves and trace back trace back, trace back. First thing, you should have at least the level of self-awareness. As somebody who's following Swamiji, as someone who sees the discourses, sees the satsang, watches and reads his Facebook posts, if you're watching Living Advaita, I know you're already one of my brothers or sisters, devotees of Swamiji. By now, you should at least have the presence to understand where you're stuck, where you're struggling. So maybe you're stuck in your business. Maybe it's your relationship. Maybe it's the seva that you've been assigned as part of Swamiji's teamily. Wherever you're stuck, look at that deeply and see, 1 year ago, where were you stuck? Were you stuck with something similar to what you're stuck with now? If yes, then you've identified sort of a struggle shaft, a difficulty pattern. Then look back another 3 years or 5 years. Where did you struggle at that point in time? How does it relate to what you're struggling with now? Keep tracing back and back and back and back and back and back and back until you get to the root incident, until you can identify literally your first memory of your life, the first memory of being you, the first memory of this incarnation of you. Find that first incident that gave rise to this thought current. Find the first incident that gave rise to this feeling of limitation, what's creating challenge and difficulty for you. Relive it. So for example, I'll give one of my own examples. One area in which I struggle. When I'm given a new assignment or somebody tells me to do something, if it's something I've never done before, if it's something completely brand new, totally outside my realm of experience, I go into a feeling of sudden panic. I just recently identified this is something that I've been struggling with for years. When I was in university, in a university-level art school in Canada. For example, one of the classes we had to take was a graphic design class, and I had never worked with software before, never worked with computers before. When we were given an assignment, fairly simple Photoshop-based assignment to make an ad campaign, I sat there and stared at the computer for the entire 3-hour class and did nothing. Because I was so intimidated by this new software, I didn't know what to do. My classmates were really confused because they saw me excelling in painting class and drawing class and printmaking class and all the other classes. Naturally, in English class, creative writing, art history, all the academic subjects. But there I was in the studio class, looking at this computer, feeling choked, feeling panicked. At that time, had I known about Swamiji's technique to find the root pattern and complete it, who knows what different direction life could have taken? Who knows what would have happened in school? At that time, I didn't know. I just thought, I'm not able to work with a computer. So many of us, when we're confronted with something new or when we're confronted with a challenge, instead of facing it, finding the incompletion and completing it, we make a decision to close off that particular aspect of life. I know people, so for me it was this, when something new is given, if I don't know how to do it. I encountered that same block in sculpture class when it came time to work with power tools. We were given one assignment to make a wood sculpture using at least 3 different power tools, either a buzz saw, a table saw, a drill. I can't even name all of the tools because, again, I had a block there. I wasn't even aware that those kinds of tools existed, a sanding belt, different things like that. Again, I went into the woodshop class, put on the eyewear protective goggles, put on the gloves, and just stared at the wood. Even with a vision of what I wanted to sculpt, I had no idea where to start, so I didn't. This was a big pattern. Even to this day, I'm seeing that this pattern is coming up. Look within yourself and find out which patterns do you have. I'll tell you what I started to do just recently. I started tracing back and finding all the different instances in life where this has happened. It's actually delayed paperwork processes when it comes time to apply for a visa. Because I'll look at the paperwork and think, I don't know how to answer these questions. And instead of calling somebody up, asking for help and figuring it out and doing it, time will get wasted, precious minutes that could be spent enriching or causing or meditating or in a devotional practice or making something else happen, precious time gets wasted just staring, feeling overwhelmed. When I finally looked back, traced back, I suddenly remembered there was an incident in kindergarten. When I was 4 years old, I entered school, the kindergarten system in Canada, ECS at the time. And in that class, there was a teacher assistant who was giving everybody an assignment to make a sculpture by pouring plaster of Paris into a plastic mold. And each student was basically given a plastic mold and a little cup of plaster of Paris, and then told to pour that plaster into that mold, then let it sit and harden, pop it out of the mold, then they were taken to the next station where it was time to paint it. When I was given the plastic mold and the cup of plaster, I asked her, "What do I do with it?" And she started yelling at me. "What do you mean, what do you do with it? We already gave the instructions. Why aren't you just doing it? Do it, do it, do it." She grabbed my wrist forcibly, dumped the plaster into the mold. Because my hand was shaking, some of it spilled onto the floor. Then she started screaming at me for that. I can see now that could be the beginning of this thought current, the beginning of this panic pattern when faced with something new, when faced with a challenge. Looking back, I remember that terror that I felt. Here was this teacher who I perceived as mean because she was always yelling at the kids. I can still remember even her stinky breath, and I would try to avoid her because I didn't want that wretched smell in my face. I can remember how I felt in that moment. Fear-stricken, panicked, incompetent, incapable, stupid. I saw the other kids were doing it, and I wondered, why can't I do it? Because she's yelling. Hey, everybody else is able to. What's your problem? Now looking back, I can see immediately that was the birth of this thought current. And so in order to complete with that root incompletion, I know what I have to do next. I know the next step. Relive it to relieve it. Swamiji says when we identify a root incident like that, relive it to relieve it doesn't mean that with the presence of mind that we have now as adults, with the understanding and the intelligence of everything Swamiji has taught us, it doesn't mean that now we look back at that past incident and give ourselves some kind of a sympathy. It doesn't mean looking back at what happened when I was 4 years old and saying, "Oh, you poor girl, that teacher was cruel to you. You didn't mean to make that mistake." And it also doesn't mean looking back saying, "Now I understand why the teacher was freaking out. Imagine if 30 kids have to do this and it's streamlined and they have the next station to go to, but this one's not able to do it. She didn't mean to be cruel." It doesn't mean looking back with the adult level of comprehension and describing the situation. It means literally going back and reliving it from the space in which it was first experienced. So reimagining ourselves in our old body, imagining yourself as a child again. So if you also find your root incident, if you can identify the first time you felt greedy or scared or shy or unable to speak up in front of people, or if you have a thought current, a negative root pattern like mine, feeling incapable to do a new challenge, if you also identify an incident from your early childhood, don't just think back and remind yourself verbally what happened from the context of an adult human being. Put yourself back in those same shoes, the shoes you had as a kid. I don't remember the exact outfit I was wearing the day when this happened. I don't remember how I was dressed when this plaster of Paris scene took place. But I do remember some of the outfits I had as a kindergarten kid. I remember a pair of pink corduroys, and I remember a sweater that my grandma had knitted. So I'll remember myself in those clothes and that size of a body, getting dressed in the morning with my mother's help like that. And I'll relive the incident in this way. The instructions Swamiji gave when he taught us to relive to relieve, he said literally visualize your body as it was as a child. Visualize the haircut that you had as a child. Visualize the surroundings. See the scene. I can say every single classroom has a smell to it. This classroom had a sand table in the corner. It had kind of a dusty, earthy smell. There was also a big wooden playhouse inside. I remember the way that smelled. If you can identify your root incident, remember the smells, remember the sights, remember who all else was around you, remember how you were dressed, remember the facial expressions and even the breath, if that's a factor, of whoever was yelling at you or questioning you or grilling you or laughing at you or teasing you, whatever it might be. Put yourself back in your early childhood shoes and relive the incident again and again until the incident loses its terrorizing effect, loses its crippling effect, until you feel complete with it so that you can look back and understand it no longer affects you in your life now. Once you've relived that early childhood incident, look back at all the cases you can remember in which that same thought current happened. I can say, for me, if I bring this forward into grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and so on, I'll remember struggling with mathematics class, struggling with French language arts when it comes to conjugating verbs and doing things like that. Anytime somebody I perceived as an authority figure gave an assignment that I perceived as new, intimidating, and not understood by me, I can see now I would go into that instant panic pattern, feeling stricken, feeling challenged, feeling terrified that I'm not going to be able to do it properly, and then I'm going to get in trouble. So for me, I can bring it forward and relive it all the way into university, all the way after university into the jobs that I had taken, all the way beyond that, even into sannyas, when different projects are given. When we're able to recognize that root thought current, that self-limiting thought current, and complete it, our lives will literally start. As Swamiji said, if you consider yourself his disciple, if you consider him your guru, then do this. It's the gift he's giving all of us, the gift to be able to complete our incompletions. And it's a huge liberation. You won't be stuck with that self-limitation ever again. You will create a new life in you. Swamiji said, what is it to be able to identify that root thought current and complete it? It's you finding the true you, reintroducing yourself to you, going back to that original pure space before that root thought current was created, finding the success in your life and making it happen. Let's all do it. And I highly, highly, highly encourage you, invite you, request you. Let's make this an interactive aspect of the Living Advaita show. As each of us in Sangha identifies our root incident, completes it, and starts living successfully. Because we are in Advaita with each other, we are in non-duality with each other, we are one Sangha, we are a family. When one of us has a victory, it's a celebration for everybody. So please go to the Living Advaita Facebook group and share. What are you struggling with in life? What's the thought current? What's the root? What's something that you find difficult? We'll help you. I will personally help you. We'll even have a call about this, if you'd like to call the show and discuss it. We'll identify the root incident that created that thought current, complete it, and then let's work together on this. Let's overcome anything that's holding us back from total success. Not only it's going to be good for you, it's going to be good for the whole team of people around you. And ultimately, it's going to take our enriching and causing to the next level. It's going to be good for the entire world. So let's make this completion happen through the grace and gifts and blessings of Paramahamsa Shri Nityananda, our Swamiji. And let's do it now. I'll end this episode of Living Advaita the same way that I'll end every episode this month, and that's by picking one specific message at random from the Jivan Mukti Grantha, the energized book Living Enlightenment, which Swamiji has specifically designed to give us a message the moment we open it to a random page. So let's see, what is Swamiji's message for us today? Swamiji says, for the intense seeker, even a few words are enough. He will suddenly see the being blossoming, expanding, and expressing itself. The intensity and the openness of the disciple are like the wide open mouth of the oyster. The words of the master are like the rainwater. When the words of the master enter the being of the disciple intensely burning for the truth, the pearl of enlightenment happens. What a beautiful visual. What a beautiful analogy to leave on. When you have the intensity to have the truth, when you want enlightenment with that kind of intensity and you come to the Master with an open inner space of seeking, just one word from him is enough. That pearl is going to form, your consciousness will expand, and you will be living enlightenment. Very beautiful. So let's also awaken that intensity and know that Swamiji is the one who can give us what we're seeking. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you again tomorrow. Nityanandam. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudashyate. Excuse me. Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sarvam Satguru Padukarpanamastu.